Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. Today we have a very interesting review for a few reasons. Number one, the knife we're looking at is a very interesting one, kind of a weird one. This is the Civivi Plethiros, but also this is kind of a weird review, and actually we're going to get some elevation on this guy. This is kind of a weird review because I technically already have a video out about this knife, and in that video I said that I was not planning on reviewing this knife, and that was true at the time. But I decided to go ahead and review this knife. And the reason I wasn't going to review it at first was because this knife is discontinued. So keep that in mind as you watch this video. However, you can find this knife on sale through multiple retailers for really good prices right now. So if you're interested, you can still snag one. Okay, like I said, it's going to be a weird one. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Let's start out with our blade length measurement. Sharpened edge is coming in here just the tiniest bit over 3.5 inches. Blade length in general is a little bit shy of 3 3/4 inches. So definitely a full-size pocket knife. Let's bring out our size comparisons. There is the Rat 1 and the Rat 2. This knife has really weird proportions. it's an odd duck. That is for dang sure. Let's bring out our USA made comparisons. Here is the Spyderco PM2 and the Benchmade Bug Out. Once again, it is very rare that we see a knife that makes a Spyderco look normal, right? Although this knife does have some kind of Spyderco-ish vibes, to be completely honest. Here it is against the Civivi Elementum and the Civivi Praxis. Cool. And I guess just because I have it out here right now, here it is compared against the Civivi Statira. And I think that'll do it for size comparisons. All right, let's talk a little bit about this knife. Blade is a drop point / clip point. I mean, this part here is kind of a clippy, but drop point blade of D2 steel with a full flat grind. Scales here are G10 with a carbon fiber overlay. We have a steel liner lock and a steel pocket clip, and we are running on bearings. Another note on the scale, the purple G10 you see here under the carbon fiber is not original. I dyed these scales. This used to be a tan G10 version. So let's go ahead and go cut some stuff. Hey guys, ready to do some review cutting? Guess what knife we're doing the review cutting for? It's the knife that you're watching the review of. Duh! You know, I hope that you guys are getting some major Wild West vibes from today's scenery. I know, I live in the Wild West, but something about today, and this spot in particular, I've come out here before several times, but something today is just feels Wild Westy. Like I feel like I'm in a Clint Eastwood film for some reason. It's a beautiful day. All right, so today we're talking about the Civivi Plethiros. This is a pretty interesting and very unique knife. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about that action. Running on bearings, flipper tab this is kind of a style that was, I'm not sure if it was invented, but it was definitely well used by Elijah Isham. Flipper tab sticks straight up. You got all kinds of leverage on that. This thing fires out with authority. And it is fairly smooth on the close. It feels pretty good. You do have this blade hole. You can reverse flick it. It's not the most comfortable thing ever, but you can do it. You can slow roll it with your thumb. And you can kind of thumb flick it sometimes. But again, it's not real easy or intuitive. This blade hole is mostly just for looks. It's just decorative, basically. Let's start with the ergos. Wild looking handle, right? But the ergos are not terrible. I do feel the clip a little bit, but the knife does lock into my hand fairly nicely back here. I feel like I got a lot of leverage on that blade. You can choke up into here if you need to. I feel some hot spots off of these parts of the scales when I'm choked up like this. Yeah, the ergos, they're not great. These are not the ergos that I would like to have on a knife that I'm spinning all day breaking down cardboard with. But They're better than you might expect just from looking at the knife. So the ergos are probably, I'd probably give them like a C plus-ish. Not great, but passing. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the carry. We do have a reversible clip here, which is awesome. This is an older Civivi. So we've got Civivi's older, like, squared off clip, which I really enjoy. Goes in and out of the pocket with no problem whatsoever. Tucks away nicely. It's a fairly lightweight knife, so the carry, I don't think is going to be anything prohibitive to anyone. Let's go ahead and cut some stuff. So we have a D2, technically clip point blade, drop point, whatever you want to call it. D2 steel. Does have a very thin flat grind. This thing does cut very, very nicely. And you get to that tip quite easily. Do our rope pull. There we go. I'm going to need to get new ropes soon. 1, holy cow. 2, 3. Yeah, that crunched through that really dang nicely. Actually, even better than I was expecting. But it's a flat grind, so flat grinds do tend to handle rope very readily. Get our pull noodle out here. 1, 2, 3. Holy smokes. That is something that Civivi consistently nails, is their geometry. Look at that. Look how thin we went there, and we did not bind or snag. We cut cleanly the entire way. That right there, that is the kind of slicing geometry that I want to see on an EDC knife. Absolutely phenomenal. So, congratulations, Civivi. There's another look at that guy. Let's go ahead, get back to the table. All right, let's talk about what I'm liking and not liking about this knife. The number one thing that I'm liking about this knife, and the thing that I think is the number one appeal of this knife, is that it's just really freaking weird. This is an Elijah Isham design. Elijah passed away just a couple years ago, very tragically. He was an absolute madman of a knife designer, and this knife has a lot of his classic elements. One of the weird things about this knife is actually the name. Plethiros, as far as I can tell, is a word that Isham just made up. He was known to do that, just pull words out of thin air for his knife names. However, interestingly enough, plethoric is a word. And it was a word that used to be used to mean like abnormally large, something that's massive, basically. But it's also used in medicine to refer to anything containing bodily fluids. So, do with that information as you will, I guess. You know, I decided to just read the definition off of Google. So, it's an adjective. The first usage is in medicine. Excessively full of bodily fluid, particularly blood. A plethoric right lung. And I'd actually heard this word used a couple times in the past because my dad's a veterinarian. And that's just one of those random little things that I never even thought about until I was doing research. Like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with that word. And then an archaic use is the overly large or abundant, excessive. So, yeah, there we go. We learned something new together, didn't we, guys? And that's what this channel is all about, is learning things together. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting. I like the name. It's fun. It's got a story behind it. But, yeah, in order to talk about the other weird elements of this knife, we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the other things that I'm liking. And actually some of the things I'm not liking, too. So, let's go ahead and talk about this blade. This is actually a really good blade for EDC. Civivi does a good job with their D2. This thing is very shiny. We've got quite the reflective satin finish on here. Great blade shape, honestly. Kind of a kitchen knife-esque blade. We're very, very thin behind the edge. I mean, you can see that geometry. Yeah, we get down to a needle-like tip. We've got a little bit of flat here, a good amount of belly, but we do still have that tip drop down really, really nicely. It's actually just a little bit lower than the pivot. This is a very, very usable blade. Does it pair real well with the handle? No, not exactly. And that's another thing that's going to be weird about this review is, so I like the overall look of this knife. I like this blade. The handle, I love and also hate. And so it's kind of hard to talk about this knife in my usual format where I go all the good stuff and then all the bad stuff, because some of the stuff is really interconnected. And honestly, there's not a whole lot here that is bad, like I hate it. There's just things that are, like even the bad stuff I don't hate about the knife. The bad stuff is just what the design is. But anyways, let's talk about the action. Flipper tab, that points straight up. This is a classic Elijah Isham doodad gimmick. Great action. Fantastic action. Incredibly snappy. Very, very hard to fail. This knife is pretty smooth. I've had this for about a year. So we are, or this knife has broken in really, really nicely. So it's absolutely drop shutty on the close. I should have brought out some other Isham. I've got a Civivi McKenna somewhere. And I used to have a Civivi Lazar. I think I got rid of it. But I should have dug out that McKenna here for size comparisons, because it has a lot of similarities to this knife. And the reason I was reminded of the McKenna is because this blade hole is mainly just for aesthetics. Like on the McKenna, you can't really use a blade hole. So yeah, in that sense, the action is kind of interesting. It's because we have the shelf here, which is really cool how the hole blends in to the scales. But if you try to thumb flick it, you can't go up because you hit this. You kind of got to go this way. And it just, you don't get the best leverage. And the same thing with the reverse flick. If you just try and go up, you're going to be running into this corner here. So actually, typically I can reverse flick this thing better, but yeah, there we go. So yeah, the action is very smooth. That flipper tab is incredible. Blade hole action, not real great. The fit and finish is, pretty typical Civivi. It feels good, feels solid. We have a reversible clip, which is awesome. This is one of Civivi's older clips too, which I actually like their older square clip. I feel like it's when they had the clip that's between this iteration and their current iteration. I did not like that clip at all. It was a little bit too pointy. This one's fine. I like this clip. All right. And again, it's reversible. Lefty celebrate. The knife itself is lightweight, so it's not going to be very difficult to carry. Access to the lock bar is pretty good. I really enjoy that this knife only has a pivot and one body screw, and then of course the pod clip screws, but those don't count. That's really cool. Very minimal hardware. You don't see that too often, especially at the budget range. And something else about this knife that I find to be particularly interesting is that inside, it is actually carbon fiber. I'm not sure how well you guys can see that. I think I found some disassembly pictures from years ago with this knife. I will try to remember to throw up. But yeah, there you can see the inside of the knife is carbon fiber. Why do they do that? I have no idea, but it's kind of cool. It's kind of neat. There's more carbon fiber on the inside of this knife than the outside. It's ridiculous, and I kind of love it, right? I kind of love it. Yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about some things I don't like. And really, the only thing I don't like is that the ergos on this knife are not they're not great. They're just not great. I can feel that pot clip a little bit. You can choke up into here and, kind of use it. But like I said, like this tip is lower than the pivot. But then the way that this forces your hand to angle down like this, you end up with the tip above your hand. So it's not very good for piercing. I mean, in this grip, it's not bad. That feels okay. But like getting to utility cuts, you gotta like really adjust your grip on the knife, and you do have to go up quite a ways. I don't know. It's just clunky ergonomics. This handle was designed for aesthetics, not utility. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, right? It just is what it is. And that's why this knife is so hard to talk about. So freaking hard to talk about. I guess let's just go to my final conclusions. Final conclusions, Elijah Isham is an absolute wizard of knife design. His designs, they stand out from a crowd. I mean, a mile away, you'll recognize this as an Isham design. And that makes them worth having in your collection, in my opinion. And there's his maker's mark, by the way, which I also think is very, very clever and suits him to a T. What do I think about this knife? I love this knife. I am so glad I have one of these in my collection. Do I recommend this knife? If you're looking for your next EDC user, this is not it. We've got a great blade, but I do not think the ergos lend themselves to an everyday carry. However, I do absolutely recommend this knife if you just want something weird and different and goofy. Like I said, price on this, you can get these for like $50 now. A lot of places selling them pretty cheap. I actually got this one at a gun show over a year ago. Geez, 2 years ago now. Holy cow. Was it that long ago? No, just over a year ago. No? Yes? Yeah, about a year ago. Okay, about a year ago. I'm sorry, I was driving myself insane thinking about that. That was a wasted... I might edit that out, but anyways, you can find these most places for pretty good prices. I recommend picking one up if you haven't already. They are worth getting. There's 3 different versions. The tan one, which, by the way, I'm going to try and make the thumbnail of this video a picture of this knife before I dyed the scales. I like tan G10 because it allows you to customize like this. And they've also got a green one that also looks really good and a black one. But yeah, this is a hard knife to review. Everything that I could critique, like the ergos, the fact the action doesn't really work with the thumb hole, you know, those are things that would be major issues on any knife but this. With this knife, I just have to sit back and just admire the artistry. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I don't think Elijah Isham wanted to design the optimal EDC knife. He wanted to make something fun and kooky, and he did. And everything about this knife is really cool. We're talking about the blade hole again. I mean, there are so many details here that I don't have time to get into, but look how this part of the scale perfectly lines up with that hole, which also lines up down here. It's just, this is made by a master designer. And when I review knives, I approach it from a very utilitarian first standpoint. And I feel like when it comes to reviewing these as pieces of art, sometimes I skip over a lot of the nuance because I really do care a lot about utility. But this is a knife that I love having in my collection just as a piece of art. And I think everyone needs a few knives like that. Big shout out to my channel members at the cowboy level. If you would like to become a channel member, there's a button down below where you can join. For everyone else, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave it a like, comment below, and subscribe. I've been Gideon, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.